Hello Ride One Up owners, my name's Apollo. Today I wanted to go over the install of the Roadster Addon battery. Wanted to start the video just by talking about the battery and kind of some of the different functionality, and then we're going to get into the install. So let's get to it. Okay, so here is the Roadster Addon battery. This is exactly how it will show up to you if you order the add-on battery kit. It comes with the battery, the charger, some installation goodies, and before we get into all that, let's just talk quickly about how the battery works. So the internal stock battery of the Roadster is 250 watt hours. So that's the total capacity. This battery, the add-on battery, also has 250 watt hours of capacity. So if you're a current Roadster owner, take whatever range you're getting now and double it. That's the effective range that you're going to get with the add-on battery. So it does come with a second charger, and that's because they do charge independently. So the internal battery charges separately from the external battery. So you do have to charge them independently. However, they do drain together. There is one thing to know about this. The battery with the higher voltage will drain first, and then once they are both even, they will drain together. So an example of this is, let's say my internal battery is at 100% and the external battery here is at 70%. So on my display, it would show standard full battery, and then it would drain down until they're both at 70%. So as soon as the internal battery reaches 70%, which is the same as the external battery, they would then drain together. So the battery with a higher charge level drains first, and then once they are even, they drain together. So that's just one thing to know when you're planning to go for a long ride, or you're just looking at the display kind of wondering how it works. Beyond that, there's not too much to know with how they function. It's pretty straightforward. And let's get into what the kit comes with. Okay, so here is everything that comes in the Roadster add-on kit. We have a charger. The charger is very similar to the stock one that comes with the bike, so Roadster owners should be familiar with that. It comes with a mounting plate. So this mounting plate attaches to the water bottle cage bosses, and this is going to be what the battery holder attaches to. The kit also comes with a new bottom plate for the bike. So at the very bottom of the Roadster, there is a plate that looks almost identical to this. The new plate has a bigger hole here. So at the very end of the plate, there's a hole, and the new plate has a bigger hole. So the stock one allows for the motor cable to come out of the frame and run down the chainstay to the rear wheel. This one allows for the same thing, however the hole is bigger to accommodate the cable coming from the battery. That cable looks like this. Here that is. We'll get into a little more detail about this when we do the install, but I just wanted to explain why it came with a second bottom plate. So it comes with that. Also comes with some keys to remove the battery from the holder. It comes with a T25 Torx 25 wrench, and this is the only tool needed to install the kit. Please note that under the wrench there are some additional mounting hardware screws. So we want to set these aside and not lose them. And then finally, the battery itself. It comes on the holder, and the holder has a key slot, and it also has the wire which comes out the bottom. So we'll get more into this and how it all mounts up in a sec, but I just wanted to go over the individual components and what you can expect to get with the kit. Okay, so we are back at the bike getting ready to do the install. Before we dive into it, I just wanted to go over a couple quick things along with an overview of the steps. So since the intro, I have taken my bike down from the repair stand. I realize that most people aren't going to have a bicycle repair stand at home, and that's totally fine. The job is very easy to do without it, but if you have one, definitely use it, as you know what a luxury the repair stand is. So a general overview of the steps is going to be installing the mounting plate onto the water bottle cage bosses, installing the battery mount on top of that, and then at that point we're going to flip the bike over, we're going to access the internal controller, we're going to plug everything in, button it back up, and we're good to go. Pretty straightforward to install. However, one thing to know if you are going to be flipping the bike over is to not rest the bike on your display. So when the display is on the handlebars, it is sticking up above everything else. So when you flip the bike over, all the weight of the bike is going to be resting on the display. We don't want that, as it's going to crack the display. So either just unbolt your display and unplug it, like I did here, or put a couple books or whatever you got lying around under the grips so that way it elevates the display off the ground. Just something to watch out for, but beyond that, it's a pretty straightforward install. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we are at the bike, at the bosses, getting ready to mount the mounting plate. This is going to be the first step in getting the battery attached. So this mounting plate has 2 holes that are recessed, and then the back side is totally flat. So the way this is going to mount to the bike is that the recessed holes are going to correspond with the bottle cage bosses. So it's going to go over them like this, and they're going to sit recessed inside. That way we get a nice clean flush install to the frame, whereas if we did it the other way, it would be sitting way out here, big gap behind the frame, kind of an ugly install. So we want to make sure that these recessed holes are facing down over the bosses. So to mount this, we aren't going to use the bolts that came in here. I took them out before I started shooting the video, but if they're still in there, just take them out right now. What we are going to use are the 3 screws that came with the kit. So there's going to be one that's shorter and has a beveled head. There's going to be one that's shorter that has kind of a flat head. And there's going to be one that's longer that has a flat head. So let me put these 2 flathead ones down, because we're going to end up using the beveled head one for the start of this step. So we're going to position the mount so that way the bottom hole and the middle hole are lined up with the mount. And then I'm going to screw this screw in. So the size is a Torx 25, and the orange tool that comes with it will work perfectly. However, just for the sake of the video and for a little bit of speed, I am going to use a Torx 25 bit, try to speed things up a little bit. If you have any grease or any Loctite, like blue, kind of low-grade Loctite, I would use that on this. It can help a lot if you live in like a wet climate by the beach or something like that, or if you're a commuter who rides through adverse weather conditions. It's always nice to lubricate the bolts so that way they come out easier. But if you don't have any of that, don't worry about it too much. So once we have the first bolt in, we're going to then mount the battery holder. So the battery holder has 3 slots in it, and we are going to use the bottom 2. So these bottom 2 slots are going to line up with the middle and top hole here. So it is fairly critical what screws we use next. The middle one not only goes through the battery holder, but it goes through the mounting plate as well, so it holds the battery holder and the mounting plate on, kind of does a double purpose. So we want to use the longer screw for that, and then the top one can be the shorter screw because that just screws into the mount. This top hole of the mount is threaded. So let me do that real fast and we'll get this going. I, just as kind of a habit, I would tighten these down loosely at first, and then, you know, really send them home once they're all kind of in position. Okay. And then we're gonna put this second one in. Okie doke. So, one of the nice things about the way this mounts is it has a little bit of up and down room. So I personally would have it positioned fairly low, just to kind of give yourself a little bit more room, but it's all kind of personal preference on how you do this. You just want to make sure that the bottom part of the battery mount is not touching your chainring. So let's snug these up. Okie dokie. So that is good to go. So the next step is going to be running this wire down into the controller and getting that all hooked up. Okay, so here we are at the bottom of the bike getting ready to do the next step. We are going to have to remove this bottom cover of the bike to access the controller, which sits in here, and we are going to be hooking up these two connectors. So, in order to get in there, we have to remove one bolt from this side, which I've already done, and one bolt from this side. I also already loosened this one because the camera's kind of in the way. So, this is just going to pop out like this, and these are both Torx 25 as well. So, the orange wrench that you used for everything else is going to be used here. So, this cover just lifts off, and now we can access the inner controller. So now that we have this open, we can see there's a number of wires in here. What we're really going to be looking for is the XT connectors, the yellow XT connectors, like what we have here. So let me start by pulling everything out. I'm going to start by just kind of pulling on the motor cable as it's kind of the strongest and just kind of gently pull that out. And then once I have a spot to grip, I'm just going to grab the side of the controller. If you'll note, mine has the cadence and the display cables on the top of the controller, and then it has the power cables on the bottom. You're going to want to note the orientation in which these come out, because that's typically the easiest order to put them back in. So, let me lift this out. Okay, so here we are. This is the controller, if you've never been in your Roadster before. This is kind of the component that ties everything together. It's what helps your electronics talk to each other. So, at the bottom of it here, I have a red and black wire coming out, and that is going to lead to our yellow XT connector. Now, the other side of this leads down into the frame to the battery, and we just want to unplug that. Easy enough. So, this is where we're going to hook up our external battery. So if I zoom out here, you can kind of see what I have going on. I have routed this wire up through the chain stays, and now I'm going to plug it into the controller around the bottom bracket. So zoom back in here, I'll show you how that's done. So there is a male XT connector on the battery. I'm going to hook up the female of the external battery to that, and I am going to, sorry about my hand being in the way, it's a little tricky to do without that. Okay, so now that that is hooked up and we're refocused, I can hook the external battery XT connector up to the controller. So as a second helper, these connectors do come labeled with the external battery kit. So I did, this is my second take, so I did take those stickers off already. But normally there would be stickers on there to help out. But it's pretty straightforward because they're male and female connectors, and there's really only one way they can go. Okay, so now that that's all hooked up, we are going to put everything back in. So we have to put our controller and our new cables back in. So typically the easiest way to do this is, like I said, just following the pattern that was there before. So I have this XT connector going back to the battery, so I'm going to leave that one on the bottom like this. And then I had my cadence and my display on top, so I'm going to keep that configuration as well. So I just put the controller in like that. Let me see if I can zoom out, get a different angle. Yeah, pretty easy. And then these two plugs are going to go on top, and then it's all just going to slide down and back in. So pretty straightforward. And then you just want to tuck your remaining wires back in. One thing to note is that I have the controller where the end with no cables is down in the frame, and I have the end with the wires coming out kind of facing up towards us or towards the bottom of the bike. So that's just one thing to note to make it a little bit easier to reinstall. So now I'm just going to hide this XT connector in here. Kind of like that. And then I'll have what's remaining is the cable coming out to my battery holder and then the motor cable. So when we button this back up, we're not going to use the stock plate. We're going to use that plate that came with the kit that has the bigger hole that'll accommodate these two wires, not just the one wire that the original accommodated. So let me just make sure all my wires are out of the way here, and I'm going to put this on and just tighten it all back down. So let me do that. Again, this is one of those times where if you have Loctite or grease, it might be advantageous to do that. These did come Loctited from the factory with a blue Loctite, so just a little dab will do you. You don't need a whole lot. Okay, so I got that one in, and I want to do the other one, but again, my camera tripod is right here. So I will do that and be right back. Okay, so here is kind of the final product. I did, while I was tightening this this bolt down, I did kind of remove this cover, and I straightened these wires out. So the motor cable is kind of nicely running out here, and the external battery cable is kind of running out here. I had them crossed before. I would probably just run it like this. You know, keep it clean looking, keep it simple. So let's flip the bike over, get the battery installed, and go for a ride. Okay, so I have the bike turned back over, and before I go out and ride, I just wanted to show one more thing. And that's going to be how the battery mounts to the holder. So it just kind of goes on here and then pivots into place. You can see there's two metal prongs that stick up, and then there's kind of the receptacle right there. So this is just going to go on like this and then pivot into place. So it does not click or anything like that. So it just kind of goes up like this and will hang out. In order to lock it in place, you have to use your key and then lock it in place. So that's a half turn, and now it's locked, and we're ready to go ride.